Hey guys, I'm Dimension Jumper. Today we're doing my top 5 least favorite boss fights in video games. Now, I think we can all agree that boss fights are, in video games, are an interesting way of either progressing the story or guarding a particular object that you might need to collect to progress the game because they're an interesting obstacle because they all have different forms. All the boss fights are uniquely different, sometimes similar depending on which game you're playing. But I would say that all boss fights aren't created equally, in the sense that you've got some boss fights that are more memorable than others, but then you've got other bosses that aren't really memorable because whether that's their fights, how easily you can take them down, that sort of thing. And that's what this video is mainly going to be about, just the boss fights that I personally don't like, in the sense that whether how you fight them, how easy it is to take them down, and that sort of thing. So yeah. So for number 5 is Shadow Okuma from Persona 5 and Royal. Now, Shadow Okuma is, in concept, an interesting boss because he, in the context of the story, the real Okuma wants to try and become a politician, and he's going to be using I believe, his company as a sort of stepping stone to become a politician, and he doesn't care who he uses to try and get into the position. And in the fight, he sends out legions of robots, which are basically, I think, a representation of the workforce of his company, Akuma Foods, and in the Persona 5 Royal version specifically, he has his own daughter being represented as this sort of loyal robot who agrees with everything he says, unlike the real Haru. And I would say the boss fight is, as I said before, in concept is interesting. Overall, I'm not a huge fan of it because you mainly fight the robots, and the whole palette when it comes to some of the major progression boss fights have been mainly robots, and it gets kind of boring just having to fight the same model of robots every single time. And I understand in concept in terms of who the robots represent, but it's like it feels like it goes on forever. And another thing is that this whole boss fight is on a time limit, and I'm not a huge fan of time limits in games. Um, I feel like I'm being rushed, and feel like I have to try and complete a particular objective before the timer resets and stuff like that. And depending on which game I'm playing, either restart, if it's like something like Majora's Mask, restart back to the first day, or if it's the Okuma fight, I have to restart the entire boss fight. And yeah, I'm not a huge fan of that. And Okuma himself, once you've beaten him, once you've beaten all the other robots before fighting him, he goes down in 2 hits, and that's pretty much it. And it feels pretty pathetic and underwhelming, I would say. So yeah, not a huge fan of that fight. So yeah, for number 4 is the imprisoned boss fights. Now, for this part, I'm mainly talking about all of the imprisoned fights as one, because they're pretty much the same fight, except each one is slightly different than the previous one. But they're pretty much the same. So I'm going to be putting all those 3 boss fights together. So with the imprisoned fight, it's, in terms of story progression, it's interesting. I do like how with each fight it gets a bit more difficult in the sort of sense, in the sense that with the first fight, he's basically just climbing his way up towards or using the spiral to climb up towards the temple. In the second fight, he uses like the cliff walls things to climb up, and then in the third fight, he can fly now. And yeah, and with each fight, it does get progressively harder, but from the second fight and in the second and third fights, you get Groose, and you can use him to throw bombs at him at the imprisoned, and yeah, I do like that bit. I do like Groose's involvement. I think what would have made I think because with the imprisoned it feels a bit too easy when Groose is around. So maybe if I would say if I had improved the imprisoned fight, maybe have the first two fights um, have no Groose with it. So or on the third part of the third or the second fight, when you have to hit the spike on his head again for the third time, have Groose be ready to use it, and let's say he needs to just fix a few more things on the Grootinator, which is the thing that he uses to throw bombs, and then have him be around for the full fight in the third part when you try and get the song of the hero. But yeah, just it's one of those fights that it feels like it should be hard, but it feels also easy. Like take one thing, add another thing. Just it's one of those things to me personally. So yeah, maybe if it had if it had like some improvements here and there, just some tweaks, it would have been an interesting boss fight. So yeah. For number 3 is the Mandy Bug Stack from Super Mario Galaxy 1. Now this fight is pretty much easy. It's pretty much what the fight is. It's basically these two bugs, these two purple bugs, one stacked on top of each other, and the main way to defeat them is to ground pound, and that's pretty much it. And they've only got one attack that's just rushing towards you, and yeah, when you compare it to some of the other bosses in the game, the Mandy Bug Stack isn't really threatening. At least with a boss like the mole guy from Gusty Gun and Galaxy, at least that's a challenge. And yeah, with the Mandy Bug Stack, not really fun, not really that interesting. And I think if you took it out of the game and just replaced it with a normal Mandy Bug or something like that, the game wouldn't really change a whole lot, or the level itself wouldn't really change much. And it does appear again in Galaxy 2, but it's still easy. It's still surprisingly easy just to ground pound it twice, and then you get the star. So yeah, it's really, really that simple. For number 2 is Wolfric from Pokemon X and Y. Now this fight is the last gym fight in both X and Y, and I would say that when it comes to a final gym, the final gym of a region should be difficult, but in the sense that it shouldn't be. It should be like easy, but not too hard. In the sense that like if you look at something like not Ulfric, yeah, the final gym of let's say Black and White, that should it should be something around that. In the sense that okay, you need like some moves, maybe some Pokemon with the same type, maybe some other moves like an Ice type, that sort of thing, to try and beat the two Dragon Gym leaders, depending on which version of Black and White you're playing. But with Ulfric, he's surprisingly easy, because he's got 3 Pokemon, and they are surprisingly easy to fight. And yeah, I think one of the major improvements should be that he should have one additional Pokemon. He should have one additional one, and he should also have a Mega Abomasnow, because he has one on his team and he doesn't Mega Evolve it. And I feel like it should have been a whole lot better if he did that. And I think it would have made the fight a lot more interesting, because with X and Y, I'm a huge fan of X and Y. I'm a huge fan since I started playing it like years and years ago. But with the gyms and a lot of the fights, they're surprisingly easy. And I think one of the huge improvements is that the gym leaders, or some of them, should have access to Mega Evolution. And with Wulfric, he definitely should have had it, and I think that would have made the fight a whole lot more memorable. And yeah, he's only got three Pokemon. One of them I don't think has all four moves. I don't think one of them has an entire roster of moves. It's got about three moves, and I don't really remember what the moves are or which Pokemon it is. So yeah, I think that's a real, I think, lost potential with that, but gym leader. So yeah. And for number one is Louise from Crash Bandicoot 4. I'm not 100% sure if I'm pronouncing the name right. And with this fight, it's probably one of the most forgettable boss fights I've played in a game, mainly because she appears around about halfway through the game, and it's like in this swamp area of the game, and the whole fight is that you're on this surfboard or this jet ski surfboard, and in order for Louise to take damage, you have to make these rat enemies on barrels move towards where tentacles are, and make those tentacles hit the barrels. And it's an interesting boss fight in concept. I just mainly think that the controls are quite sensitive, and a lot of the time I would just have to restart that fight a whole lot again, whether that's mainly due to the getting hit by the tentacles, or I think getting damage taken in the whirlpools. I think there's whirlpools in the level, on the in the boss area that you fight her in. So yeah, a lot of the time it's just one of those aspects, and I'm not a huge fan of the boss fight because it's really forgettable. Even when I was trying to write this list, like I was trying to think of what other fights there was, and then I remembered, oh, that fight from Crash 4 is pretty forgettable. So yeah, so it's really really forgettable for me personally. I'm not sure about anybody else who has played the game. So yeah, so that's been my top 5 least favourite boss fights. I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.